You are listening to the I Choose My Best Life podcast with Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, a show that is dedicated to helping you live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally. For additional resources, visit ichoosemybestlife.com.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Saundra, and you're listening to I Choose My Best Life. Are you effectively using your gifts, and are there any gifts you have yet to discover? That's what we're going to be chatting about today. I'm here with my friend Chrystal Evans Hursts, and she has a new book out called 100 Days of Discovering the Gift of You. Now, Chrystal has been on the show before, so needs no introduction, but I do want to really ask a personal question before we just even jump into the conversation, Chrystal, because whenever someone sits down to write a book, I feel like a part of them is automatically getting stirred up by God before the book ever comes out. So what got stirred up before this book came out?
The reality is this book is an expansion of a chapter that was in She's Still There. And the chapter in She's Still There was about me in my early 20s, not knowing what the heck I wanted to do for my life, quitting my first job after 6 months, being unemployed, working temp jobs, and then just trying out different things, trying to figure out what the heck am I supposed to be doing, and feeling like I'm smart, like I went to college, I passed the CPA exam, but why do I hate my life? And I literally, in my early 20s, took a piece of paper and wrote down strengths and weaknesses because I was trying to figure out what should I be doing based on my design, based on how I'm wired, because obviously it's not just based on what I can learn or what I'm good at. And that piece of paper, I still have it to this day. June the 5th, I believe, 1996. I took a picture with it the other day, was the foundation of this chapter. Like, how do you figure out why you're here? If you're lost in the middle of your life, how do you start attaching to how God made you and what he wants you to do as a result? That chapter has gotten so many questions. You were writing about it. You're talking about it. People are trying to figure out how to connect who they are to how they live in this world. And so we expanded on that by creating this book, 100 Days of Discovering You, to literally walk people through this process of taking this 360 look at your life, at your design, at what's happened to you, at what lights you up, at what drains your energy, to isolate the benefit. And this is from me. This is from me hitting that multiple times in my life, because I think we hit it multiple times in our life, to assess and reassess, how do I bring the best of me to my world so that I get the most out of my life and so that I'm able to bless as many people as possible, because I'm the only one that's me showing up as myself in these places and spaces.
Do have to admit, I absolutely loved when I saw and started looking through this journal. And it is a devotional journal. I love that because it gives people an opportunity to just really bring the word, the message directly into their life and start unraveling some of those things that they have yet to even sit down and discuss with themselves. One of the things that really stood out to me is that I do feel like is a lot of people who are experiencing this. Yes, around 20s, you start thinking about this, but you're so right. You go in and out of these discovery points in your life. What is something that you've discovered in the process of this as a struggle with even the discovery? Because I find a lot of people are even a little bit afraid about what they'll find when they go deeper into discovering their gift.
I've learned that there are parts of me that just are that I wish they weren't. And that's a part of the journey of living, is learning to accept that you are who you are, even if you have to buff some edges and shine some things up. There's a lot that's hardwiring, and trying to be something I'm not is not where I win. Let me give you an example. I wish that I were more bubbly and positive and the light that walks in the room and Pollyanna. And don't get me wrong, I'm mature. I can walk into a room. I can work a room. I can have a conversation. I can network. But I wish I was naturally that way. But here's what I realized. The part of me that is not naturally that way, the part that really wants to read a good book, that wants to be alone, that wants to go deep, that wants to explore something fully, that's what makes me a good writer. That's what makes me able to really dig in deep, because I'm willing to be separate. I don't mind solitude. I'm willing to, and I'm not saying a bubbly person can't be a writer. I'm just saying that's what adds to my level of depth and my level of transparency, authenticity, and willingness to say things other people may not be able to say, because I've been alone with myself to get comfortable enough to say them. My sister, who is very bubbly and very Pollyanna and very cheerleader, she literally was a cheerleader. She'll say about me, that's what's so good at you. You'll be quiet. And actually, my brother said this too the other day. He said, you'll be quiet. Everybody else may be talking and you'll be sitting there and people are wondering if you're even engaged. But then when you open your mouth, you're saying something that's very deep, that's very thoughtful, because you just waited until you had something to say it. And so I wish I were more like that. But my lack of positivity, the other side of that, is that I'm a very good critical thinker. I can see a hole, I can fix a problem, and I've learned how to see a hole and fix a problem without being overly critical, like that maturity. But where everybody else is like, it'll be fine and whatever. And I can see the domino falling 10 days, 10 months ahead of time. And so learning that critiquing part of me, or that deeper, quieter part of me, has a strength, and honoring that strength has allowed me to show up in places and spaces as the best way I can. So I think part of it is just saying, listen, like every strength has a weakness. It has an underside. And every weakness, it's like tails and heads. If you turn that coin over, there's something else. There's something that brings to the table. Kirk Franklin and I are friends. They're family friends of ours. And he has said many times, I just wish I wasn't so emotional. Yeah, but that's what makes you write good songs. That's what makes you able emotionally to tap into the human nature component that helps you to write a song that we can all identify. And so he'll cry at a drop of a hat and say, I just wish I wasn't so emotional. But there's another side to that. It makes you a great artist. And so I think if you don't like what you find, then you're only looking at one side. And you have to discipline yourself to say, this is the part I don't like, but what's the other side of it? What glory does that mean I bring to a group of people?
There's so much wisdom in that. And I think it's hard for a lot of us to appreciate, as you mentioned, some of these unconventional gifts, these gifts where it looks like weakness, or it looks like negativity, or it looks in some way, you can label it in some way where it's, I don't know if I want that gift. It doesn't really sound like something you want to say, hey, I got this thing. But when you, as you mentioned, look on the other side, when you actually look at it from all angles.
Yeah.
And often, and I love what you shared there, that your brother and your sister, like you're thinking, okay, I'm a little bit, I'm not as chipper as they are and all these other things, but they're looking and admiring something that maybe sometimes you even were like, I don't know if I like this gift. What are some other unconventional gifts, or maybe not unconventional is the right word, just gifts that we might push back on a little bit that have great value in the kingdom? Because there's great value for someone who's actually able to have that deep level of wisdom, who can sit still and reflect. What are some other gifts that you find that you see in people and they're like, girl, I don't want that?
I think, first of all, we associate, and I'm saying this from my own anecdotal experience, but we associate giftedness with seen. We associate giftedness with celebrated. We associated giftedness with platform, applause. Just because of human nature, we like to put people on pedestals, and then social media takes that to a whole nother thing. So I think that people don't think of gifts that aren't highlighted. So
That's good.
One of the examples that I give is when I'm talking sometimes, or I'm speaking, I'll ask the audience, how many of you love a good spreadsheet? And there'll be people that raise their hand, and I'm saying, and there are people in this room that are so glad you do, because they never want to see one. They never want to touch one. An analytical, logical, structured mind is a gift, because even if you can develop it, even if you can develop an ability or develop your skill, there's a wiring where people actually love it. Like I have a friend who, she gives me spreadsheets and they will be colored and pivot tables and organized, and you click this one thing and everything in the spreadsheet changes. And she is delighted to give that to me. She is just lit up. And a part of it, when I talk about gaining a new perspective on you, it's your gift, it's your hardwiring, it's your abilities, it's skill, something that you've developed, it's your interest or your passion, and it's your nature and your personality. And all of these conform to make this composite of what I would say is your soul. And so when we talk about giftedness, I want to talk about the angles of that too, because it could be hardwired or learned or passion or just personality. The person who does a spreadsheet to me and says nobody cares about the spreadsheet, but everybody doesn't do that. Or another gift, if a woman who has faithfully served in the nursery of her church because she loves the babies and just that's where she wants to be, she has a heart for the defenseless and the people who are small, and that is a gift. And there are people who are so compassionate, so empathetic, mindful of the pain of other people. I was talking to one of my children, and he said, some things just hurt too much. And he's a boy, so I shouldn't be feeling all of this. And I said, no, that's a gift of empathy, that you can read a room and see who has a need. There are people who care about people, but they don't naturally read a room. They don't feel it in their body. They don't take that on. And so you have to learn how to manage that, but it is a gift. So I think looking for what is not celebrated that you do easily, that you do because you learned, that you do because it's a passion, it's an interest, or it just seems like it's your personality, looking under the cover of what people might not see and looking for gifts. Spreadsheets and babies, those are gifts too.
There's so much to unpack in that. I want to start with, because you name these different kind of baskets, so to speak, of our gifts. How can we begin to discover and uncover some of these gifts? Let's pick your favorite basket that people tend to not actually unwrap and help us go deeper into that area.
I will say gifts. I'll pick two because they have two answers that I think are important. Gifts are usually something you don't see because it's easy to you. It's easy to you. My girlfriends that can walk out of the door every day looking like $1 million, I think that's a gift because I am stressed anytime I don't wear black. People being able to put colors together, know how things blend, design a room. They walk into a room and they can just see it. That is a gift. And it's not a gift. Normally when I have friends and I say, oh my gosh, you're so gifted, they're like, all I did was, if you ever find yourself saying, that was easy, all I had to do was, it takes other people looking at you and saying, no, everybody doesn't do that because we don't see it because it's easy to us. So one of the best ways to discover is to ask the people that are around you. Ask your friends, ask your family, ask your coworkers, because we tend to see other people's gifts loudly because we don't have it. We go, how did you do that? How was that easy for you? Just you learned that easily, or your brain clicked with that class. And we've all had that experience where even if you're a good student, you go to school. I fought for my C in statistics. Do you hear me? I fought for it. And I'm good at math. And I was looking at other people that I had been in classes with, like, how is your brain? Like, I am struggling here. And their brain just got it. If it just comes easy to you, somebody outside of you can probably say, no, that's not easy for everybody. Ask other people what they think you're gifted in. And then when they tell you, especially if you shrug it off and go, no, that can't be it. That's easy. That's a signal. That's probably a gift. They see it and you don't. When you talk about your passions, however, you normally can sense that on your own because our body keeps score. That's a book about trauma, but the opposite is also true. Your body will tell you when this lights you up. Your soul literally feels like it's set on fire. You can't stop talking about it. You get excited about it. You start smiling about it. I saw this picture on Instagram of this guy. It was a series of photos, and the caption on it was a reel. So it was photos in a video series. So she had this caption at the bottom of it, and she said, how my husband smiles when he's with me. And he was smiling. It was just a nice, docile smile, but looked like he's happily married. And then the next series of photos in this video reel say, how my husband smiles when he goes fishing. So he's standing there, right? And he's got this big fish in his hands and his smile is 10 times brighter. I caught it. Oh my gosh. This was what he's holding it up. Okay. Fishing sets his soul on fire because you can see it. You can feel it. You can sense it. And if you need to figure out what sets your soul on fire, ask yourself, when is the last time you were really excited about something? What is the thing you can't wait to do? Or when you look back, you're like, that was so amazing. I can't believe I got to do that. When you smile bigger, you talk more, where are your people? Like, you got your family, you got your friends, you got your work. But when you get to do something you really enjoy, who are you hanging with? Because we collect people around the things that light our fire. We go to concerts because we love the music. We try hobbies. We love learning. We travel. So what are the things that make your soul just literally feel warm on the inside of your body. You're like, that makes me happy. That is passion. So passion, you notice from the inside out. Gifts, you normally notice from the outside in.
Oh, that's good. Passion, you notice from the inside out. Gifts from the outside in. I've never thought about it like that, but that makes so much sense. And I think it is helpful for people to take those kind of passion reflections to be able to reconnect with, because sometimes those things you're not doing a lot of
That's
because
right.
responsibility and all
Right.
the stuff pops in. So what if you are in that kind of season where you look back and maybe you go through your photo album and see, where do I have the big cheesy grin at, where I can actually, because I feel like some of us have been so far gone from our passion that I can't answer that question, Chrystal. I don't know where my passion is. We haven't
100%.
been in it.
Look at your photo albums. Look back at your life, because your life tells a story, but sometimes we don't. It's like reading any book where maybe it's for learning's sake. And you're like, I know I read that, but I don't remember the details. And if you're in school, you got to go back to that chapter. You're looking in the index, trying to figure out where that was so you can get the bigger picture again. We have to be connoisseurs of our own life. We have to be reviewers of our own life, because our life is telling a story, but some chapters, some sections we forget. So looking back at your journals, looking back through your photo albums, looking back through your phone 100%, and thinking back. And this is an exercise I do with people. Sometimes when I walk people through this in person, I'll do this 1-day summit where I'm engaging people, because we don't make time to do it. See, that's the problem. I could tell people today, they're not going to do it. Sometimes it's not until we go away or we create the space to do it. And recently what I did is I just walked everyone through the decade of their life and asked them 3 questions. Okay. What was the best in this season? What was the worst in this season? And what was I hoping in this season? And so if you can think, before I was 10, what was the best about that? What was the worst? And what was I hoping? Same thing in your teenage years. If you sample your life in decades, it may not be that every decade speaks, but 1 or 2 of them will. And you'll remember, because our life, our memories are like pegs that you hang a coat on. You don't remember every single thing, but there are pegs that you will hang a decade of your life, because these things happened, good or bad. And so from those pegs in your memory, you're able to hang your coat, the curation of your thoughts on, oh, I remember this. I remember before I was 12 that in the 6th grade that I worked so hard to be in the top 2 of the class. And I remember being so floored. I cried when the teacher announced it, that I was the salutatorian. What does that teach me about me? That teaches me that I like to excel, I like to learn, and I like to be recognized when I do a good job. So how does that teach me about me in life right now? I like to learn. Am I learning? I know I'm working, but am I learning? Am I achieving? Am I working towards something? Am I able to, for the people that love me or me myself, to say, this is what I'm celebrating about my achievement in this season? I love achievement. I love reading. I read, but I read a lot for work. Have I read for pleasure lately? So now I can say intentionally, in order for me to engage with my life, I should be reading for pleasure. And if I haven't done that, go to Barnes & Noble's, girl, and just pick something off the New York Times bestseller list and read. So if you will look back at the seasons of your life, it tells you a story. And then you can recreate a chapter now based on a piece of a chapter from before.
What I'm really enjoying about this is, I think too often when we go in to discover your gifts, I think a lot of times we look at these types of books or works as, oh, this is my opportunity to discover how I can go serve and do more. And that's a part of it. But I love that you really incorporate also, how do I live more? How do I enjoy of who I am? How do I be able to enjoy more of my life and be able to express myself more fully and authentically? So when looking at it from that standpoint, it doesn't really, you're not limited by
No,
seasons.
not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I think asking yourself these questions leads you to answers that you just accept. Don't try to force them into a lane. I was asking myself these questions in my 20s because I was trying to figure out what to do for work. You know what I mean? And so we will do this excavation exercise so that we can, I hate my job. What do I need to do for work? And that's okay. I'm just saying, go in search and discover and then apply it wherever it best fits. Don't limit yourself to, I'm only looking for stuff that applies to work. Because here's the thing. Sometimes the story that we need to build with our lives is beyond our planning acumen. We couldn't have planned it if we tried. I'll give you an example. I'm nursing babies. I'm honoring me. I'm a writer. I like figuring things out. Started a blog. I know nothing about coding or HTML. I just was looking at everybody else's stuff and copying it over. And I remember in the middle of the night, one night, thinking as I nursed a baby, and I pecked with one hand to type my blog post. Why am I even doing this? There's 30 people reading it. 20 of those are my family. Nobody cares. But I was like, I enjoy it. I'm going to keep doing it. So fast forward, the first book I ever wrote was a book that I co-authored with my dad called Kingdom Woman. And when he asked me, hey, I'm writing this book on biblical womanhood, and I will do all the teaching part. You just share examples. And I was like, I don't have time for that. I had kindergarten and college happening in my house. I was homeschooling. My husband traveled all the time. I was like, I don't think this is the season. I always thought I would write, but I didn't think this was the season. And he kept asking me. And finally he said, but don't you have other stuff we can pull from? No, you're writing on biblical womanhood. I've been writing about F is for fire truck. You know what I mean? Like my life with small children. He said, let me have an editor check your blog. 75% of the words that ended up in Kingdom Woman came from my blog. I was never aiming to write for that stuff to go in a book. I was just cultivating my gifts and my interests and my passions. And I could not have written that if I would have tried. Some things I've heard people that for work were doing their job, but they had a passionate commitment to a nonprofit. They loved giving back to the community. So they were honoring, maybe they had a bad childhood and they wanted to be a big brother, a big sister. So they were doing this. And later down the road, that becomes their job. They weren't aiming for that, but it was like an opportunity comes and they are invested with a certain organization. So don't limit yourself. Just look and apply at wherever it fits. And don't only look because you hate your job. Look because you should love your life. And your life is more than your job. It's more than your family. It's more than vacation. It's more than your health. It's all of it together. It's all of it. And when you look and say, what story has God always been writing? What story have I been living? And I need to double down on some of that 30 years later, 40 years later. Just re-inject it, because you re-injected your yesterday into today is a self-fulfilling prophecy of who you've always been and how you can reconnect with him or her in this season. And then you let life work out. You let God work out how it intertwines to make better chapters. But if you will just make good use of it, it will work itself out.
That's so powerful. I think for that journey, you had to have walked through all of that before you could ever share it with us and give us this framework, this way of processing it over these 100 days. When you think about that now and you look back at that younger version of yourself, maybe not even the 20-year version, maybe the 30 or the 40-year version of yourself, what would you say that this book would allow her to experience that maybe she didn't experience because she didn't look deep enough into the discovery?
I think I'll give you a very specific example and then I'll make the point. In my 20s, I was a single parent, figuring it out, working hard. In my 30s, I ended up with 5 kids, married, and I enjoyed that season. I felt a little lost, which is She's Still There. That book, that's where it came from. In my 40s, a series of events put me back in the workplace, and I'm back to working hard. When I go back and look at 20s, 30s, and 40s, in my 50s, I can say, okay, Chrystal, you've collected knowledge about yourself. And every time it comes, you are in a situation where you have to apply in a workspace your gifting, your talent, or whatever. You go into overdrive. Between your 20s and 40s, you worked hard, but in your 30s, you took a breath. In your 50s, take a breath. Balance the working hard, because what happens in those seasons, you're breathless. You miss things that you should have been at. There are things that you were driving yourself to do that weren't that important. Like your story tells you that your achieving can go into overdrive and not be helpful. And you know what it is to sample living at the rhythm of life that you want to. Resample that. Combine the work that you love with a pace that's sustainable. So what it gives me now is the ability to live better, because I am a person. We are people who have tendencies, we have habits, we have pathways that are developed in our brain. And without intentional redirection, we tend towards our habits, towards the things that we always do. So looking back helps me to have greater control and greater intentionality to live a life that I actually know I'll be happy with, because I know what the cost and the benefit is of seasons I've lived before. In short, it helps me to live better. My girlfriend called me, and it was her 55th birthday. She said, I'm going to Costa Rica. She's going with a friend at work. The friend is going to visit her dad, she's only been to Costa Rica one other time. And I'm asking all these questions. Where are we staying? Like, where are we? My husband is asking me, what are we doing? How much is this going to cost? And she just looked at me and she said, you know me. We've known each other for 30 years. Girl, just live. And I was like, you're not going to take me nowhere crazy. I know you. You're not stinking filthy rich. It's not going to be super expensive. You don't have all the answers to all my questions. Do I want to take 4.5 days and go to a country I've never been to or not? Look at your calendar. Are you free? Quit analyzing it. Just live. You own your own business. You can take 4 days away and go. But this is because I've been cultivating. Girl, just live. Stop being so uptight. And since that's a message I've been telling myself from the lessons I've learned before, I was able to make a different decision and had a great time zip lining in mountains in Costa Rica.
That is such a great example, because I feel like that to me is the abundant life. When I think of John 10:10, I know everybody's got their own interpretation, and then there's God's interpretation, right? Which none of us know the fullness of. But I feel like that's a part of it that we don't really appreciate, is that the limits are off, the limits of the wow that can happen in our lives. And I feel like we have a lot of people living lives that they feel like are wowless, but they're not willing to, girl, just live a moment. It's all the process and the analyzing. What can I take out of this that makes sense? But does it always have to make sense? Sometimes it's just supposed to be good and fun and exciting. So I want to make sure people know how to get a copy of your book, how to learn about all the stuff you're doing, from events to retreats to all the stuff that you're doing, and be able to go deeper into this process, because this is what I feel like is the next step for most believers. They know they have a purpose. They are tapping into their identity and getting more and more into the fullness of that. And then the next part is, well, who are you in the totality of that? And how do you live out of that place? So I want to make sure people know how to really dive into this resource with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just 100 days to discovering the gift of you. And if you search 100 days and Chrystal Hurst, it'll pop up. You can buy it anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all those places. And Dayspring is another opportunity to buy it. But anywhere you would normally go, it's there. And I'm talking about this kind of stuff all the time. And so if you're like, I just want to hear and learn more from you, Chrystal, you can go to crystalevanshurst.com/subscribe. That'll put you on my newsletter list and also give you a 3-day prayer journey, just to walk you through some of the prayers that I believe will help you excavate with God the journey that he wants you to take in your life.
Excellent. And we will link to Chrystal's book on Amazon as well as on her website. And we'll also link to some of her resources. She does a lot of different stuff. She has a community of ladies. Sister Circle, I believe, is the actual name of the community, or the Inner Circle. Did I get that right?
The Sister Circle is everyone. Members are my Inner Circle people. So yes,
both
and.
So both and I want to make sure you guys know about it, because I think that's a big part of it, being able to have a community where you can work together through some of these processes. And so she has a lot of different resources and things available there as well. Chrystal, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much for being here with me.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Until next time, everyone, live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be truly seen and deeply loved, to be able to step into the fullness of your identity, the parts of you that you know and the parts of you you have yet to experience. In my new book, Being Fully Known, The Joyful Satisfaction of Beholding, Becoming, and Belonging, we dive deep into these topics. It's an invitation to experience just that. The joy of finding out who God says you are that maybe you haven't recognized yet. Maybe He felt the Holy Spirit speaking to some part of your heart about something and you're thinking, I couldn't possibly do that. Well, in this book, we are going to dive deep into your I could nevers. We're going to take a look at the parts of your identity that maybe have been shut down because of fear, maybe have been shut down because of things other people said, and maybe because of things you said to yourself. It's a journey into the kind of love that changes everything, the kind of love that only can be experienced when you behold God in the fullness of who He is and allows what you behold to become a part of who you are becoming. You can find a copy wherever books are sold, including Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, as well as Target and some other retailers. When you purchase early, you get a lot of great pre-order gifts, so be sure to get your copy now.